A 9-year-old boy was eating alone at a diner every single night. No parents, no family. Just a child, a bowl of soup, and a secret nobody around him fully understood yet. This is the story of Daniel, and the night one man decided to sit down instead of walk away changed both of their lives in ways neither of them expected. There is a small diner on the corner of a quiet street. Nothing special about it from the outside. Old neon sign, a few tables, the smell of coffee that never really goes away. The kind of place where the same people come in every week and the staff knows your order before you open your mouth. For 3 weeks straight, the staff at Rosie's diner had been watching a little boy walk through that door every single evening. Always alone. Always the same worn navy backpack. Always the same gray hoodie that was just a little too big for his body. His name was Daniel. He was 9 years old. And every night he would walk up to the counter, open his small hand, and count out coins to see if he had enough for the cheapest thing on the menu. A small bowl of soup and a glass of water. Not because he loved soup, because it was all he could afford. The staff never made him feel bad about it. Maria, the evening waitress, had a way of quietly placing extra bread next to his bowl without saying a word about it. Big Pete in the kitchen had started making Daniel's soup thicker and richer without ever being asked. Nobody drew attention to it. They just took care of him the only way they knew how. In silence. With small acts that cost almost nothing but meant everything. But nobody knew the full story. Not really. Daniel's mother, Elena, had been in the hospital for 2 months. She had gotten very sick, very fast, and the family had no money for the kind of treatment she needed. Daniel's uncle, a man named Gary, was supposed to be looking after him. But Gary worked night shifts at a warehouse, which meant Daniel spent most evenings completely alone in a small apartment, and an empty apartment with no food. And no adult around did not feel safe to a 9-year-old boy, so he came to Rosie's, because the light was warm, because Maria smiled at him, because even if he only had coins, nobody there made him feel like he didn't belong. That is the world Daniel was living in. Quiet, heavy, and entirely too big for a child his age to carry alone. Now here is where the story turns. On a Thursday evening in November, a black car with tinted windows pulled up outside Rosie's diner. The driver needed a break. The man in the back seat wanted coffee. That was it. No big plan, no reason. Just a stop. The man's name was Richard Cole, 52 years old, the founder of a logistics company worth several $100 million. He had started that company with almost nothing, 20 years earlier, working out of a tiny office with second-hand equipment and a lot of stubbornness. He was not the kind of man who was easily moved. He had sat across from some of the sharpest and toughest people in the business world and never once lost his nerve. He walked into Rosie's, sat at the counter, ordered a black coffee and opened his phone. He had emails to read. He had no intention of looking up. Then he heard a small voice. "I only have this much. Is that enough for the soup?" Richard looked up. There was Daniel standing at the counter, his small palm flat showing Maria a handful of coins. Maria looked at the coins. She looked at the boy, and she smiled and said, "That's more than enough, sweetheart." Richard watched. He said nothing. Maria brought Daniel his bowl and his bread. Daniel carried it carefully to a small table near the window, set his backpack on the chair beside him like it was something precious, and began to eat slowly, not the way a hungry kid usually tears into food, slowly, carefully, like he was trying to make it last. Richard put his phone down. He sat there watching this boy for a moment. Then he quietly called Maria over. "Who is that kid?" he asked. "Where are his parents?" Maria hesitated. Then she said, "He comes in every night. Always alone. We don't really know the whole story. We just make sure he eats." Richard was quiet for a moment. He paid for his coffee, left a large bill on the counter, and stood up to leave. He walked toward the door. He got close enough to push it open, and then he stopped. He stood there for a second. Just a second, and something. Maybe it was a memory of his own hard years. Maybe it was just the simple weight of what he had just seen, made him turn around. He walked to Daniel's table. "Hey," he said. "Mind if I sit down?" Daniel looked up at him the way children look at strangers who pay attention to them. Careful. A little guarded. "I'm not bothering anyone," Daniel said quietly. "I know," Richard said. I just wanted some company. Is that okay? Daniel looked at him for a moment. Then he nodded. Richard sat down. He did not start with big questions. He asked Daniel if the soup was good. Daniel said yes, that Maria always made it just right. Richard asked if he had a favorite food. Daniel thought for a moment and said his mom used to make rice with tomatoes, and it was the best thing he had ever tasted. Used to. Richard caught that word. Used to? He said gently. Daniel looked down at his bowl. She got sick, he said. She's in the hospital. It's been 2 months. My uncle works nights, so I just come here. It's safer here than being alone. Safer. A 9-year-old boy chose the word safer to describe why he preferred a diner over his own home. Richard felt something shift in his chest. He had built a company from nothing. He had survived failed deals, bad years, and situations that would have broken most people. But something about this boy, this quiet, careful, self-sufficient little boy who counted coins and made his soup last, hit him in a place no boardroom ever had. He asked for Daniel's uncle's number. Daniel hesitated. Then he gave it. Richard stepped outside and made a phone call. When he came back in and sat down again, he looked at Daniel and said, I talked to your uncle. He's coming to get you tonight, and I want to ask you something important. Is it okay if I try to help your mom? Daniel stared at him. You don't even know us. I know, Richard said. But I want to. Over the next 3 months, Richard paid for every part of Elena's medical treatment. He connected her to specialists she never would have been able to reach on her own. He made sure Daniel had a proper care arrangement so no child had to wander the city alone at night anymore. He didn't do any of it loudly. No press, no announcement. He just did it. When Elena finally walked out of that hospital, thin but standing, eyes full of tears she could barely hold back, the first call she made was not to the doctors. It was to Richard. He told her not to thank him. He told her Daniel had done the hard part. That Daniel had showed up every night, kept himself fed, kept himself safe, and never stopped waiting for her to come home. Your son, Richard told her, is the strongest person I have met in a long time. Daniel still goes to Rosie's diner, sometimes with his mom, sometimes with Richard, who has become something like a quiet, unlikely godfather in their lives. Maria still brings extra bread without being asked. Big Pete still makes the soup thick and rich, but now Daniel orders whatever he wants, and every single time he leaves a tip because he remembers what it felt like when someone took care of him without making him feel small. And he never wants anyone else in that place to feel invisible. Some people stop somewhere just because their driver needs a break. They walk in wanting nothing more than a cup of coffee. And somehow, in the time it takes to drink it, they see something that changes the direction of their whole life. One moment, one decision to sit down instead of walk away. That is all it took.